Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, we will continue following the turbulent yet deeply heartfelt love story of Ly Hoai Ca and Hùng. In the previous episode, an unexpected event struck and shook their little family. After many years leaving his hometown to make a living in the city, Hoai Ca's foster brother suddenly returned. But this return was not filled with joy or reunion. Instead, he appeared worn out, exhausted, and disheveled, leaving both Hoai Ca and Hùng speechless. His voice trembled, and his eyes turned red with shame. He confessed that all the money he had saved, all the effort of many years, had vanished after he was lured into an investment scheme that turned out to be disguised gambling. Not only did he lose everything, but he was also being hunted down by loan sharks, with nowhere left to hide. In utter despair, he returned to the only place he could think of, to Hoai Ca, the girl he had always considered his own sister. As for Hùng, although he was not related by blood, he could not ignore such misery. He understood that behind Ha was Ha's mother, the woman who had loved Hoai Ca as her own child and placed all her hope in her only son. After many sleepless nights, Hoai Ca and Hùng made a decision they knew was risky. They gave Ha all the money they had saved to build their new home, the money they had worked so hard to set aside over a long period of time. Their only hope was that this money could help Ha repay his debts, cut ties with gambling, and rebuild his life from the beginning. Ha accepted the money with tears streaming down his face. It was not just money. It was trust. It was forgiveness. It was the last chance his family was giving him. He walked away with a heart full of gratitude and heaviness. No one knew that those footsteps were leading them toward even greater turmoil. A much bigger, more heartbreaking event was silently approaching. Stay until the end of the video to see what happens next. After receiving the money that Hùng and Hoai Ca gave him to repay his debt, everyone believed it would be the turning point that allowed Ha to rebuild his life. Hoai Ca reminded him gently, "You just need to pay the debt and go back to your mother. Home will always welcome you." Hùng silently hoped that the man could finally wash away the mistakes of his past. But only a few days later, devastating news arrived, cold and sharp like metal striking stone, leaving them both stunned. Ha did not go to meet the creditors. Ha completely disappeared. His phone was off. The rented room he stayed in was empty. No one knew where he went, and no one had seen him anywhere near his old neighborhood. Hoai Ca froze when a vendor from the night market told her that a man who looked very much like Ha had been seen staggering past the stalls, his eyes red from sleeplessness, and shortly after that, he slipped into another gambling den. Those words hit Hoai Ca like a heavy blow to the chest. Her legs felt weak, and she had to hold onto the table just to stay upright. All the hope, all the trust she and Hùng had placed in him, trust built with both love and sacrifice, shattered instantly like glass hitting stone. It was not just disappointment. It was a deep, lingering ache, the ache of realizing their trust had been betrayed, and of seeing Ha's path grow darker and more hopeless than ever. Hùng could not accept the rumors right away, so he immediately set out to verify everything himself. He went straight to the night market, the place where Ha was supposedly seen, each step heavy as if carrying all the fear and worry within him. He asked longtime vendors who always noticed changes around the area, and even the motorcycle drivers stationed at the corner of the street. Some shook their heads, others only vaguely remembered, but the more he asked, the clearer the fragments of information became. A tall, thin man in a worn-out jacket had been wandering near an illegal gambling shack at the far end of the market. That man looked very much like Ha. Not stopping there, Hùng asked a few acquaintances to check the security cameras of nearby stalls. He stood silently for a long time before the small monitor, watching a shadowy figure disappear into the narrow alley where the hidden gambling den operated. The footage was blurry, the angle unclear, but the way the man walked, the way he shifted his shoulders when exhausted, Hùng recognized it instantly. In that moment, he slowly closed his eyes. When he opened them again, only a heavy sigh escaped. Ha is gambling again. It was not anger. It was not sudden disappointment. His voice carried a long, weary helplessness, the kind that comes from someone who has tried everything, yet the outcome still slips through his fingers like sand. At home, Hoai Ca sat on the stone bench outside the porch, her hands clasped so tightly that her fingers turned pale. The evening breeze brushed past the roof, carrying dust with it, but nothing could ease the tightness in her chest. When Hùng approached, her eyes trembled with fear. She asked, her voice shaking despite her attempt to stay calm. "So, the money we gave him. He used it all to gamble again, didn't he?" The question felt like a slow blade cutting into the heart. Not because of the money, but because of the trust she had built with all the love she had for her foster brother. The air between them grew heavy. Even the smallest sounds, like falling leaves, seemed unusually loud. Hùng placed a hand on her shoulder. Not too tight, not too light, just enough to keep her from collapsing. Maybe he's no longer clear-headed enough to think of anything else. His voice was the thin thread pulling her back to reality. He did not blame Hùng, nor did he show anger, because both he and Hoai Ca understood that at this moment, blame was meaningless. For people trapped in disguised gambling, as long as they see even the faintest hope that a single win could change their life, they will plunge into that spiral like moths drawn to a flame. Ignoring family, ignoring the chances given to them, even ignoring their own lives. Bad news came crashing in one after another, like violent waves rising in the middle of a storm, giving Hùng and Hoai Ca no moment of peace. They had not even recovered from the disappointment caused by Ha before another blow struck them without warning. That afternoon, just as the sky was fading into a weary shade of sunset, a familiar neighbor hurried over. She was out of breath, her hand gripping the door frame as if to steady herself, but the deep wrinkles on her face clearly showed her panic. Ha's mother, she left. She walked out of the house the same day Ha disappeared. Her trembling voice sounded as if she herself could not believe the words coming out of her mouth. The sentence hit Hoai Ca like a bolt of lightning tearing through her body. She froze, her legs weakening beneath her, barely able to support her weight. If Hùng had not reached out in time, she would have collapsed right there. "She left?" Hoai Ca stammered. A simple question, yet filled with horror. Hùng took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice steady. He looked at the neighbor, eyes firm yet full of worry. "Please tell us everything. When did she leave?" The woman recounted the story with sadness lining every word. Earlier that morning, when she went to bring some vegetables to Ha's mother, as she usually did, she noticed the front door slightly ajar. The inside of the house was unusually quiet. The bed was neatly made, the clothes folded into tidy stacks, so neat it felt unsettling. There was no suitcase, no sign of preparation for a long trip. But Ha's mother was gone. The only thing she left behind was a small piece of paper placed in front of the family altar, as if she had struggled internally for a long time before deciding to leave. Hùng handed the paper to Hoai Ca. The fragile sheet trembled in her fingers, as though it still carried the faint breath of a broken-hearted mother. The handwriting was slanted, the ink blurred by tears. "I'm sorry, Hoai Ca and Hùng. I don't have the face to stay here anymore." Just a few words, yet heavy enough to crush the heart of anyone who read them. The moment Hoai Ca saw the first line, her eyes turned red. By the time she finished reading, her tears no longer fell in drops, they streamed endlessly, like a dam breaking. She clutched the note as if it were the last piece of the woman she cherished, her fingers trembling violently. No, why would she think that? She didn't do anything wrong. But deep inside, she knew the truth. To a mother like her, the shame caused by a wayward son was heavier than any comfort the world could offer. Memories of the woman flooded Hoai Ca's mind like a slow-moving film. During her pregnancy, Ha's mother cooked warm porridge for her every day, soothing her through sleepless nights. When Tony was still too small to even lift his head, she stayed awake carrying him so Hoai Ca could rest. When the world turned its back on Hoai Ca, that woman was the only one who stood by her side. A gentle, selfless woman who had lived her entire life for others. Yet now, she had to disappear into the night, carrying shame, guilt, and heartbreak that no one could share with her. Hoai Ca burst into tears, her sobs choking painfully in her throat. She was not crying because she felt abandoned. She was crying for the mother who had always been strong, always forgiving, now forced to run away from the very place she once called home, simply because she could not bear the weight of her son's disgrace. And that hurt far more than anything Ha had ever done. That afternoon, the sky was heavy with gray clouds, as if the entire atmosphere was trying to hold back a storm that refused to break. The first seasonal winds swept through the bamboo rows in front of the house, creating long, dry whistles that made the already suffocating air feel even heavier. Hoai Ca sat motionless on the old wooden bench, the note from Ha's mother still in her hand. She read the trembling lines again and again until the ink felt etched into her heart. Tony lay in her arms, his tiny hands gripping her shirt, but Hoai Ca did not even notice his movements. Her mind was locked between the fear of losing her foster mother and the dread of Ha wandering deeper into a path with no return. Suddenly, bang, 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 fists pounded on the door, loud and violent, echoing through the house like metal striking steel. Tony startled and burst into tears, his little legs kicking wildly in fear. Hoai Ca clutched him to her chest, her heart sinking as if dragged into a cold abyss. Outside, a rough, hoarse voice shouted, each word hitting the walls like a punch. "Open the door. Ha owes us money. If you know him, come out here and talk." The shouting tore apart the last bit of peace in the small home. Hoai Ca staggered backward, her steps trembling. Her hands turned ice cold, sweat forming despite the cool air. Only one thought spiraled in her mind. They're here. The thing I feared most has finally happened. Before panic could swallow her, Hung stood up. He did not speak. He simply walked toward the door, each step firm, unshaken, like a wall rising to shield them from the storm. He opened the door. The fading evening cast a sharp shadow across his face. His eyes were cold enough to still the wind. He spoke in a deep, steady voice, every word precise and controlled, carrying more authority than any shout. "You are disturbing a private residence. I am an officer of the district police. You will follow me to the station for questioning. No threats. No anger. But the weight of someone who wore a badge, someone who did not fear confronting danger, spoke louder than anything else." The men outside exchanged uneasy glances. A moment ago, they were pounding on the door like rabid dogs. Now it was as if someone had thrown cold water over their heads. One swallowed nervously. Another tried to sound tough, but his voice shook. We don't want trouble with the police." "Let's go," another muttered, avoiding Hung's gaze entirely. After a few curses muttered under their breath to save face, they turned and left. Their steps were hurried, almost like running, as if staying a second longer would bring disaster upon them. Once their shadows disappeared into the alley, only the wind and the lingering tension remained in front of the house. Hung closed the gate and exhaled slowly, not in relief, but in resignation. Back inside, he found Hoai Ca trying to soothe Tony. Even so, her shoulders continued trembling with each breath. Hung sat beside her and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly, though worry still clouded his eyes. Hoai Ca held Tony close, her eyes red and filled with sorrow. "If Ha keeps going down this path," she whispered, "things like this, they won't stop, will they?" Her voice cracked, half despair, half a desperate wish for a miracle. Hung did not answer. Instead, he tightened his hand on her shoulder just slightly, steady and warm. A silent message. "No matter how violent the storm becomes, I will stand beside you." That night, after Tony had fallen asleep in his little cradle, the house sank into a silence so heavy they could hear the wind slipping through the eaves. Hoai Ca stepped out into the yard, where the dim yellow light cast soft, broken patches across the worn cement floor. Hung quietly sat down beside her. Neither of them spoke right away. They simply sat there, side by side, letting their exhaustion and worry settle into the darkness that surrounded them. Hoai Ca's face was pale with anxiety, her eyes swollen from crying for too long. Hung, though trying to remain strong, could not hide the weight on his shoulders after spending the entire day extinguishing one crisis after another. After a long pause, Hoai Ca finally broke the silence. Her voice trembled, as if speaking too loudly would cause her pain to spill over. I don't understand why Ha would choose this path again. He had already changed. I thought things were finally getting better. She covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Tears slipped through her fingers, hot enough to burn her skin. Hung looked out toward the dark yard, where the shadows of the trees swayed in the wind, as if whispering the sorrows of human lives. His voice was low, steady, and filled with quiet bitterness. Some people think that turning back once is enough. But temptation, especially the temptation of money, it pulls them back so easily. Just a bit of hardship, a moment of losing faith, and they stumble again. He wasn't blaming Ha. He was speaking with a deep understanding and sympathy reserved for someone who truly wanted to stand up, but could not fight against his own weaknesses. Hoai Ca lowered her head, her shoulders shaking with each breath. Her tears continued to fall, unstoppable, endless. I'm worried about Ha's mother. She's been through so much already. Who knows where she is now, whether she has eaten, whether she's cold. The image of the elderly woman quietly leaving her home in shame made Hoai Ca choke until she could barely breathe. Hung turned to her, taking her cold hand into his. His hand was warm, firm, carrying the resolve of a man who refused to give up. We'll find her, no matter what. We can't let her wander alone like this. His words were not loud, but they carried the weight of a vow. In that moment, beneath the dim yellow light, in the crisp night air, one thing filled both their hearts: an unshakable determination. They would find Ha's mother, wherever she was, however far they had to go, no matter how many hardships awaited them on the path ahead. The story pauses here. A long night stretches on, weighed down by the relentless storms that have struck Hung and Hoai Ca's small family. Ha, the man they placed all their trust in, the one they gave a final chance, has once again fallen into the spiral of gambling. The money Hung and Hoai Ca spent half a year saving to build their new home has vanished like sand blown away by the wind, disappearing without a trace. And Ha's mother, that gentle and hardworking woman. Overwhelmed by heartbreak, shame, and guilt, she quietly left her familiar home, carrying with her a despair too heavy to put into words. No farewell. Only a trembling note, as if her tears had soaked into the fragile paper. And now, in the still but suffocating darkness of the night, Hung and Hoai Ca sit side by side, knowing they are facing one of the hardest decisions of their lives. They must find Ha's mother before anything worse happens. But where the road ahead will lead, no one knows. How far will their search take them? Will Ha reappear, or will he continue sinking deeper into his own darkness? Will the challenges ahead break this little family, or bring them even closer together? Everything remains uncertain. Stay tuned for the next episode to uncover what happens next. Their story is far from over and full of turns no one can predict.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người, tại vì kênh Tiểu San 200 mấy đô rồi. Có hỏi số tiền cái này không? Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình vẫn đang làm video nha mọi người. Chỉ hôm rồi mới làm được có thêm một video tới lúc 1 giờ rồi. Way down but chậm chạp. Cảm ơn mọi người vì đã theo dõi video của mình nha. Mình đang hoàn thành các bước cuối cùng để đăng video lên đây. Chào mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video sau.